My name is Jason Peddle. I'm the Vulnerable Persons Coordinator for Toronto Police. So my role is 99% issues around elder abuse, educating our officers, educating the public, coming out to speak to people is among what I would consider my most important roles, and certainly some of the best use of my time is coming out to speak with people. Just a real quick history of where I'm coming from, because it's somewhat relevant today. I've been a police officer for 10 years. Previous to my career as a police officer, my first career was as a social worker. I worked in nursing homes in Durham region as an activation therapist, kind of on the front lines with seniors. I worked with, obviously, I have a lot of experience with dementia, working with persons with dementia. That was a 5-year stint out in, at Fairview Lodge in Hillsdale Manor, if any of you are familiar with Durham region. At the same time, I was working as a family support worker for the Alzheimer's Society. So I facilitated support groups for caregivers and for people in the early stages of the disease, and did a lot of work out in the community with caregivers. So I would never ever suggest that I understand or can relate to how difficult it is to be a primary caregiver or secondary caregiver. I do have probably a more intimate appreciation for what caregivers go through than many would. So I'm very happy to be here speaking with you today. With the topic of elder abuse, it's such a broad topic that anytime you speak about elder abuse, you have to narrow your focus considerably. So today we're going to deal with financial abuse, and more specifically frauds and scams at a pretty grassroots level, not overly extravagant frauds. To get the point across, we're going to talk about 3 things. Very quickly, we're going to discuss why older adults might be more vulnerable to frauds than younger people would. We're going to get into some of the specific scams that are popular right now, maybe leave you with a few points, hopefully a little bit of information of how you can avoid being victimized, and some tips how to avoid being a victim. So some of the circumstances in the life of a senior citizen that would be unique and make them possibly I'm going to use the word, a caveat just at the beginning, I'm going to use the word senior citizen, older adult, older person interchangeably. And sometimes I'm going to say we, including myself as a senior citizen. I guess given my role and my history, I kind of consider myself a part of the community. So please don't take offense if I'm saying we and including myself. So there are a few factors that make senior citizens unique and more vulnerable to fraudulent activities and criminals. A couple of them are physiological, a couple of them are social. So we'll just speak about those really quickly. There is a correlation between aging and a decrease in cognitive function. This is not the disease process I'm talking about. I'm just talking about natural and healthy aging. In the same way that you probably can't run as fast or jump as high when you're 75 as you could when you were 35. And the fact that you're more likely to have bad knees and a sore back when you're 85 than you did when you're 40. It's natural, healthy aging. There is also a natural decline in cognitive processes. There are changes in the brain. We become, as we age, and this isn't drastic change, but when we age, our ability to receive information and store information and retrieve information just slows down. So we have a harder time learning. It takes longer to learn new information. It takes longer to recall facts and details from the past. This is relevant to this subject because when there's a smooth-talking con man in front of you, very quickly giving you information and trying his best to make sure you don't have time to think about what's being said, you may reach back into the recesses of your mind trying to recall details, accurate details, and you may grab, as opposed to the most accurate piece of information, you may grab the most accessible piece of information, something you learned more recently. They're called false memories, And the American Psychological Association did a study which revealed that older adults are actually 10 times more likely to have false memories or inaccurately recall details than a younger person would. My intent is not to stand up here and talk to you about the pitfalls of aging, but I think it's a relevant point, and my intent is just for people to be aware of, even in health, there is some cognitive decline, and to have that perspective and to acknowledge that exists. It could help you out when you're overmatched by, a young, smooth-talking con man who's very good at his craft, just to be aware of that. There's a correlation between aging and an increased acquisition of health conditions that affect cognition. So this is the disease process. So long-term illnesses of all kinds, short-term illnesses and infections tend to be more common as we age. And of course, the most obvious, dementia. I think the number right now is 1 in 11 people over the age of 65 suffer from dementia. Or as I like to put it, 10 in 11 people over 65 don't have dementia. So it's certainly not a natural part of aging. It's a disease process, not something you should expect to encounter, but certainly becomes much more relevant later in life, obviously, than when you're younger. Just things to consider. And just a couple social factors that tend to be more commonly parts of the lives of senior citizens than when you're younger is that people tend to, generally speaking, social supports get reduced. Children have moved out of the house. Friends and family become less accessible. And sometimes people become isolated, which leaves them more vulnerable to strangers coming to the door and things like that as well. Okay. So now we'll discuss really quickly why career criminals who are very much looking to dupe people out of their money, why would they choose senior citizens? Why are senior citizens a preferable target? Beyond what we just spoke about, how do they perceive senior citizens? Older adults generally are retired, which just makes them more accessible. They're just at home more. Older adults grew up in an era, a more trusting era. I've talked to a few of you before we started, and the subject was that times have changed. It's a different world on just about every account. But certainly in the 70s and 80s, if somebody showed up at your door in a reflective vest with a laminated identification with Ontario Hydro on it, they were likely there for legitimate reasons. Now you can fashion yourself a uniform in 5 minutes, and for $2 get yourself a nice laminated card with the official label on there. It's a lot easier to misrepresent yourself these days. So when your formative years were spent in a time when you were prone to trusting everybody, we change, but not that much. You're still a trusting generation, which is a good thing. In this case, it can leave you at a disadvantage. Criminals perceive seniors to have a nest egg, a whole bunch of money stashed away. So they believe, again, a different era where people kind of saved for the future as opposed to my generation who live in debt. So it's perceived that seniors have access to a lot of money, savings and investments and the like. It's perceived that seniors are less savvy with newer technologies like computers and smartphones and things like that. I know there's at least one of you that's very much savvy with that kind of stuff. But a generalization, I think based in fact, is that seniors are less on the internet, less and up to date with the newest technologies, less than the younger generation. I'm 40 and I'm a lot less up to date with even 15 years younger than me. So it's a changing world that way. Last point, seniors are less likely to report when crime is committed against them. Part of that is a shame that we all feel when we're duped or tricked by somebody. But also with seniors, there's the legitimate concern that they're going to be judged by others, like their children. Dad paid $30,000 to get his roof done. Maybe it's time we step in and start making decisions for him. And we want our independence. We don't want someone stepping in making decisions for us, judging us, challenging our mental capability. We don't want to have to be moved to an institution. We want to stay home. And if our if our kids think we're at risk to getting conned all the time, they might want to keep us safe. So that's another reason that seniors might be less prone or less likely to report being victimized. So these factors kind of create a high reward, lower risk scenario for perpetrators. Okay, so we're going to move on to some of the scams that are going on out there right now. I've kind of broken them up into individual scams and categories. We're going to talk about door-to-door scams. We're going to talk about telemarketing. And we're going to talk about internet scams. As we go, I kind of want you to pay attention to the commonalities in the scams. The specific details do differ, and we'll go over them. But really, if these scams change over the next 6 months and the approach of the offenders change a little bit, I still want you to be able to recognize what the red flags are, because the specifics might not be the same. But the fact that they want to get your confidence, make you feel like they're professional or friendly, and they want you to commit quickly, those are the types of things you really want to look out for all the time. And we'll go over that over and over again. So I'll start with a home renovation scam. This is an unexpected knock at your door where someone may say, we're in your neighborhood today, we're around the corner working on a roof, and we noticed that your shingles are in bad repair. If you don't get it done really soon, you're going to have a lot of roof damages. It's going to cost you $50,000. Since our trucks are here and our staff is here, we can start tomorrow. And since it's going to be easier for us, I'll even give you this price. We'll do it for $7,000. It'll save you a lot of money. And they're giving you motivation to act quickly, to commit quickly. Give us a down payment today, we'll start tomorrow. Those are all serious red flags. No reputable company that's established is going to give you a $4,000 discount just because their truck is parked down the street. They have jobs lined up if they're reputable and have been working for years. If they can get $10,000 for a roof, they're not going to give you give it to you for $6,000. Those type of discounts, kind of out of the goodness of their heart, doesn't happen in the real world. Those are people that are trying to get fast money from you, get your deposit, and then you never see them again. So be cautious. When somebody comes at you with something like that, you never have to let anybody in your house when they're talking to you. When people are coming to approach you, they knock at your door out of the blue, they're approaching you, they're initiating the conversation, it's still your show, you're in charge, it's your life. They're trying to come and talk to you, but you're the one in charge. You can say no immediately. You don't have to you don't have to let them get into it, because they're pretty convincing after a short while. I can say myself, if you're not interested and your roof's fine, I'm sorry, I'm not interested, and close the door. We don't want to be rude, generally as good people, but you have to be. And I mean, you can be direct without being rude, but sometimes you have to be rude too. So don't worry about that. Don't share information. Don't show them gas bills. No one who comes to your door needs to see any of your paperwork. Okay, nobody legitimate, banks or the gas company, we'll cover that in a bit, is sending people out to get information from you that they already have. Get identification from the people. As I said, fake identification is pretty easy for people to make, but ask for it. Make sure the name is the same on the card as the paperwork they're holding. The face is the same on the card as the individual we're talking to. If you are interested in their service, or you believe that maybe my roof is in trouble, you don't have to act at that moment. You can take 5-6 days. You can take 3 years if you want to. Again, it's your life. It's your decision. Say, I'll take your card. I'll be in touch. Take a look at your roof. See what you think. Ask a friend, a neighbor, a son or daughter, what do you think? You don't have to believe the person who comes to your door. You don't have to use their service if the roof does need to be fixed. If you find that the roof needs to be fixed, you can go out on your own time and look up the numbers of companies and call them and get references and do your homework, do your research. Again, a reputable company is going to expect you to do research and is not going to be put off by that. So don't let anybody pressure you into making a decision tomorrow or today. If you do decide to get the work done, so you've done a little bit of homework, hopefully, there's a few things that I think you should know that will be helpful. In Ontario, under Ontario law, any home renovation project or any door-to-door sale that's more than $50, so basically anything above buying some Girl Guide cookies, requires a contract, a written contract. And you want to ensure that that contract exists and that everything you're expecting to be done is in that contract. All the materials, the fact that the materials are included in the price you're agreeing to, make sure that that there's an estimate in the contract you get. Under Ontario law, if there is an estimate in the contract, the final price cannot be more than 10% more than that number, so get a contract and keep it. If somebody tells you a project is going to cost $1,000 and they finish it and come back to you and say, you know what, there was some materials we didn't anticipate having to buy, it actually came out to $1,600, they can't do that. They can only go 10% above the price that's in that contract, unless you agree at some point, oh, you know what, I do want that, and you agree on the contract in writing to change it. So remember that 10% rule. There is what's called a 10-day cooling off period for door-to-door sales. So if you happen to sign a contract with somebody who comes to your house to do your roof, to do your driveway, 6 days later someone says, no, you got duped, you're paying too much money, you can cancel that contract within those 10 days without any cancellation fee. Okay? With water heaters, incidentally, it's 20 days. I don't know why that is, but keep that in mind. And also keep in mind, if the work starts during those 10 days, you might be on the hook for what's been done so far. So what I would suggest is, in the contract that you're signing with the company, you say, yes, I agree to this work on January 1st. I do not agree to the work starting before January 10th. Then they can't start it, and you have your 10 days to think things over, and if something doesn't look right, cancel it. Don't pay cash. Always pay with a check or a bank draft or something that leaves a paper trail. And one very important one, I'm not sure if this is common knowledge or not, is that you want to make sure that a contractor doing work on your house has liability insurance and has workman's compensation for their workers. If somebody comes to work on your house and they fall off the roof and hurt themselves, and the company doesn't have workers' compensation or insurance, you actually, as the homeowner, are liable and have to pay the...
How do you check for that?
A good company, you ask them for it, and they will bring you proof of it. If a company is resistant to doing that, red flag.
There's proof.
Yeah, they'll have, I believe the same way we have car insurance, that they should have proof, or they can certainly get it for you without cost or without any aggravation. So be wary of contractors that ask for a lot of money up front. Be wary of anybody who asks for cash. Beware of a contractor who's vague and pretty much, a minute and a half after meeting you is ready to start the work. A good contractor is going to need to ask you questions and have specifics so they can give you an accurate quote. If somebody's really eager just to get going and just to get paid, your odds are decent that you're not going to get the work done. There's also legislation that allows you to hold on to 10% of the full fee for up to 45 days after the work's done to ensure that the work is done well. And you never have to pay till the work is complete. If they ask for down payments, I would suggest 10%, no more than 10%, and you don't have to pay till the work is complete. Okay, you can have someone come inspect the work after if you want to make sure it's complete before you give them the money. Another door-to-door scam that's still very popular is what I'll call the public utility scam, public utility inspector scam. When people show up at your door and say, I need to see your furnace, I need to read your water meter. That should never happen. No utility company, municipal level or government agency or regulatory organization send people door to door. None of them. If you happen to believe them, and they're pretty convincing, they're going to stand in front of you and tell you that, we just came from your neighbors. What's the big deal? We do it to everybody. They're going to make it sound routine, and they're going to make it sound like you're missing out on something if you don't allow it, that it might cost you extra money because you might not have the most environmentally friendly heater. And if we add this piece of hardware, you're going to save $2,000 a year for the next 20 years. They're going to try to make it sound like you're missing out on an opportunity if you don't let them in. So if you are questioning yourself, business card, name of the company, thank you very much, close the door. Don't use a phone number they give you. You go find out yourself in the phone book, on the internet if you're an internet user, or if you have a family who is internet savvy, and you look up the company yourself, or you look up companies that are in that business, use the phone number that you find yourself, and say, are you sending people door to door? Is my furnace costing me money? Do the research yourself. Don't ever take the word of somebody coming to your door. Door-to-door sales are really, I think, a lot more often illegitimate now than they are legitimate. And I could be wrong, but I'm almost certain that people are working on legislation to actually make door-to-door sales, a thing of the past, illegal. Could be wrong about that one, though.
Jason,
Yeah.
often when you sign a contract and give a deposit, some of the people want to have some money up front to buy the materials.
Yeah.
Is that required?
No, I would be careful of that as well, because a well-established company likely has a credit account set up with Home Depot and Canadian Tire, and they go pick up the materials on their charge account, use the materials, get paid for the job later, and pay down the road. Again, I mean, there's always the debate, you know, if I want to get my buddy to do it and save a few $100, or do I want to get the established company to do it? And I'm not going to tell you, just do your homework. If you're going to go with a lower priced company, make sure that they're an established company. You can check on, the internet has, the Ministry of Government and Consumer Services is an internet site, and in the Better Business Bureau, you can go on the internet as well, or call if you find the numbers. And they have lists of companies that have complaints against them, and a buyer beware list, companies you should avoid who have had complaints against them. I think they get over 1,500 a year kind of thing, and incidentally, 21% of those are roofers. So that's kind of why I'm picking on roofers today. I hope nobody's
As an accountant, I've had clients or people come in and say, you know, if you pay me cash, I won't charge you the HST.
right.
So
Right.
gotta be careful.
And I'll speak for myself, not say we've all done it, but I've done that. We try to save a buck. Be careful cutting corners.
I won't.
Yeah, because and I'm on camera saying that too now. But just be careful. So with the public, sorry, I'm trying to move quickly because I'm trying to get my hour presentation into about 35 minutes. When utility inspectors show up at your house as well, and they want to come in, what they're possibly trying to do is get in and look at what you have in your house to know if this is a place they want to come back to down the road, hopefully not, or B, one of them goes downstairs to check the furnace, one stays up, and you either go down or stay up and talk to one of them, and the other one's filling their pockets or going through your drawers. So that's, don't let them in your house. They have no legitimate business in your house. Again, if you want to call, say thank you very much, close the door and call Ontario Hydro and ask if they really need to see your furnace. You never have to commit to anything right away. You can always do your own homework. That's one of those recurring themes I was talking about earlier. That's one of them. I have this slide labeled as vacuum cleaner and air conditioner. Door-to-door vacuum sales are not what they used to be, nor encyclopedia sales. Those have been hurt by the internet as well. But any door-to-door product, really. Again, having grown up with your formative years in a time when those sales may have been a nuisance, but they were legitimate. Probably, I'm 41 now, and probably for the last, I would say 20 years, probably when I have a knock at my door and I look outside and I see someone with paper, I roll my eyes and I know what's coming. It's just almost never legitimate anymore, unfortunately. So yeah, the door-to-door sales are going to be high-pressure sales pitches. They're going to encourage you to sign long contracts or to give money up front for inferior products likely. So be very aware. You can always tell people to leave, and if they don't leave, you can always tell them you're going to call the police. And if they still don't leave, you can call the police. There's no problem calling us for that. We attend calls for that kind of stuff all the time. Don't feel bad about that. If somebody's on your property and they won't leave, they're trespassing, and you can call 911 if you feel threatened. Well, the telephone is still a really good way for scammers to operate. Very frequently used. When they call, there's really two things that telephone scammers, telemarket scammers are looking for. They're looking for you to send money to them for a multitude of reasons, or they're looking to get personal information from you that they can, A, use down the road to pretend they know you for another scam, or B, they take your personal information and they go apply for a credit card in your name and are using up your credit. So that's the two things they're looking for. And we'll talk about some scams specifically. These are 5 of the top 10 scams. They're very similar in their methodology. The misleading prize offer is when you're misleading prize offer is when you're contacted and informed that you've won a free trip or you've won a large sum of money, and what you need to do to release the money is pay an upfront charge to cover taxes or border fees or handling fees. And you'll notice when I'm talking about people being victimized by things like this, I'm never going to suggest that the victims are foolish or stupid or how could you do that. They're honest people who sometimes get in over their head. These criminals are very, very good at what they're doing. They're very convincing. I was at a seminar a couple put on. I believe the couple were both in their 80s, if not the gentleman in his early 90s, and they had been taken on a scheme just like this for $83,000, their life savings. And it was that they said after the fact, I'll never say it, but they said after the way, how could we be so stupid? How could we believe it? And what they said was, at first, security sounds so wonderful. If we can have a lot of money, it's inviting, so we might take a risk we might normally not take if it means being secure down the road. That was how it started. And then when you're $15,000 deep into this and you're starting to suspect that maybe this isn't on the up and up, but I still might get the money if I just give them the next $1,100. It just added up, and that's what happened to them. Their whole life savings were gone. Untraceable. There's no way they could get it back. A pigeon drop is a similar scam. You're persuaded to give up some money in order to get more money down the road. Non-existent charities, people will phone you up pretending to represent a charity and asking you to donate money. And you do so with your credit card information, which they then have. Fake accidents, getting a call from somebody claiming to be a doctor in Massachusetts, your nephew or your son has been in an accident in the United States. He needs urgent care. He doesn't have insurance. If you can wire us $7,000, we can start on his medical procedure. Really working on your emotions and motivating you to very quickly make a decision. And of course, it's not your nephew. It's the scammers. Calls from people claiming to be from the bank, saying we just need to make sure your information's accurate, or we need an update to your account information. Can you please give us your birthday to identify who you are? Can you please give us your credit card number, your social insurance number? Banks aren't going to call you for that information, ever. No bank is going to call you for that information. No institution is going to ask you for personal or private information. They have it. They may ask you questions like your mom's maiden name to make sure they're talking to who they know they're talking to, but you're not giving any personal information under any circumstance. If something needs changing, even if the phone call from the bank makes you think, oh dear, I do have something new I need to update, you initiate the contact. You don't answer the person on that phone. You hang up the phone. You look up the number for the bank again, right? You initiate the contact. You do a little bit of homework and make sure you know who you're speaking with. This is probably the most common scam right now. This is probably the hottest one right now. You're receiving a call from somebody claiming to be from the Canada Revenue Agency, or from the police, or some official high up who's saying you're in serious debt. and we need you to pay your debt now, or you risk getting taken to court or put in jail or deported. These types of calls won't come from the CRA. People are getting victimized by this while still on the phone. People are going to the bank to get prepaid credit cards, and they're being instructed on exactly what to do while they're still on the phone. They're going to Shoppers Drug Mart and buying $2,500 in iTunes cards, which are like basically internet currency, and sending that off to the CRA. People are sending iTunes cards to the CRA. And again, it's not something that I'm going to point fingers and say, how could you be so foolish? iTunes is foreign to a lot of people, and they don't know what this is. Perhaps this is currency in modern days. So Canada Revenue Agency is never going to call you demanding money, and they're certainly not going to make you pay it any other way than showing up in person at your bank or anything like that. What they call the Grandparent Scam, similar to the fake accident, this is a very frequent. This is probably in the top 3 right now. People are calling up and saying, "Grandma," you're saying, "Is that Jane?" "Yeah, it's Jane," and now they know their name. "I was hanging out with the wrong people last night, and I probably shouldn't have been, but I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and I'm in jail in Quebec. I'm going to be in here for 7 days unless you wire my lawyer $4,000 for bail." And again, it's tugging at your heartstrings, and people are committing this money to try to help the relative who, of course, isn't in any jeopardy. If it's the actual grandchild calling you, or it's a lawyer, ask them, where are you? What station are you in? What city are you in? And again, what am I going to tell you? Look on the internet, look in the phone book, find somebody who can find you the phone number for that jurisdiction. For Toronto Police, for Barrie Police, for Quebec, for Massachusetts. Is my son there? What happened? And do your homework. The money's not going to need to be there in 5 minutes, if something like that ever did happen, which is pretty highly unlikely. Just out of interest, how many people are actively on the internet? Yeah, so probably closer to 3/4 than a half. It's such a dangerous place, the internet. Any scam that can be perpetrated face-to-face or over the telephone can be done online. And as easy as it is for somebody to show up at your door pretending to be from Ontario Hydro with the correct uniform and name tag, it's much easier for them to represent themselves as legitimate on the internet. Emails can look so legitimate. They can set up their own website in hours, probably the young kids today in minutes, to make them look completely legitimate. You click on something saying, "I'm interested in finding out how I can save money." You click on it, and just by clicking, you've given the person access to your computer data. You might get something like this pop up on your screen. I have a few times, actually. And this is what they call a pop-up. It just shows up on your screen kind of out of nowhere, and it says, "Computer virus warning. Your information, your data on your computer is at risk to hackers. You need to call this number for emergency security." And I'm going to, again, on film, I'm going to admit, I called the number. And the gentleman at the other, I was pretty certain that it wasn't legitimate, but I did call the number because I couldn't get it off my screen, no matter what I did. I don't even remember what I did to get it off my screen eventually, but he said, you need to give me the IP address or something for your computer, and we'll come in your computer and we'll fix it. And I was like, all right, that's as far as this is going to go. But if you happen to do that, then they literally, you can see their mouse moving around on your computer. They're literally in your computer doing whatever they want at that point. So don't open emails from people you don't know. Don't click on continue if it's something that's unfamiliar to you, because that can be enough for you to be in farther than you want.
And
Yes.
Jason, I just want to say too, like if you have an uneasy feeling about something, like I think it's possible to get emails from an address of a friend or relative, somebody you actually know, and it can still be a scam. Is that?
That's right.
Yeah, they can.
And so if you look at the title, and it looks very broad, or it looks very, and you've just, I phoned the people up and I said, did you just send me an email? Right?
Yeah.
And the answer will be no. And,
Yeah.
and then they do send out an email saying, what have you done open such and
Right.
such?
Yeah. Yeah, what she's saying is that they can actually email you from your friend's email address. So you're getting an email from Jason Peddle, my legitimate account, saying, donate to this cause for me. I'm running a race and I'm taking donations, and it's not from me. It's a scary world. So to recap, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, right? You're gonna get what you pay for, and if you pay a lot less, you're putting yourself in danger. If somebody's trying to convince you, if you don't act now, you're gonna miss out, red flag. Don't give financial information. Fraudsters can be men, women, any age, any culture, any race. They can look very professional. They can be very convincing. They can have offices. They can have mailing addresses, all those things. So they're good. Be cautious. And I think the main thing I would encourage you to do, and we've visited this theme about 5 times, is if you're interested beyond shutting the door in their face, which is your right, if you're interested beyond that, you're in charge, right? You're under no pressure to act immediately. You're in charge. I can go get another company to do this job. I'm going to do my homework. Something I want to, and please, if you are victimized, please report it to the police, to the anti-fraud center. Sometimes, very often, these people are smart enough to make themselves untraceable, but particularly the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center, they keep stats, and they know how people are doing things and where they're coming from, and the more they learn, the more we'll be able to fight back. So I want to cover quickly. It's kind of a different presentation, but I wanted to cover it here very quickly. What are called sweetheart scams, romance scams, and something called predatory marriage. Sweetheart scams are a little bit different than the other scams we described, in that they're not going to be quick hits trying to very quickly dupe you out of your money. It can be a very long process, very long and involved process. People who are feigning affection for people particularly vulnerable, lonely seniors are a target again, and eager for companionship, latch on to somebody who seems to be giving them a lot of attention. A 1 month, 6 months, 2 years later, the requests start coming for money, and I need money for this and that. A lot of them are online. A lot of the romance scams start online, a lot of them. I have an estimate that 15 to 20% of single seniors are on online dating sites. I won't ask for a show of hands. I don't know if that number sounds a little high to me, but it's not something I discourage, but be very careful online. 1 out of 10 online dating profiles are fake, and they're people with malicious or even criminal intent. People will send you pictures that aren't them. They'll send you pictures of grandchildren that aren't them. They'll tell you that, oh, you live in Scarborough? I live in Scarborough too. I'm over in Turkey visiting family right now. But when I come back, we'll meet up and we'll have a coffee. And then 2 weeks later, you get an email saying, oh, you know what, my flight got canceled. I didn't have insurance. I'm stuck in Turkey. Unless you can send me $7,000, I'll pay you when I get home. That's how it starts, and they'll keep at it until they get what they want. A step up from that, what I would call predatory marriage, the classic example of the 25-year-old beauty queen who falls in love and marries the 85-year-old millionaire. That happens, and we have every right to be happy and to befriend whoever we want. What really gets scary when you decide to get into marriage as opposed to just dating, is that the minute you get married to somebody, any previous wills are void at that point. So if you've painstakingly worked on your will and included your 3 children and 6 grandchildren, the moment you get married, the will is no more. And this gets kind of complicated. This is my very last point. Your legal capacity to make a decision is a legal definition that this individual is incapable of making that decision because of his mental capacity. So we're going to step in and have somebody make the decision for him. This is a whole nother subject for another day, but your legal capacity to decide whether or not you want to sell your house for $200,000, it can be determined, that takes a high degree of understanding. Okay, that's a decision that we're going to really make sure you know what you're doing before you make that decision. The courts regard the threshold for what understanding you need to get married as very low. I need to have a lot of understanding to know whether I should have this surgery. I need to have a high level of understanding to know whether I should sell my house. But the level of understanding I need to have, so my mental capability I need to have to decide if I get married is extremely low. I only have to know if I want to be with this person. So people who are, mid stages of dementia, quite cognitively impaired, have the right to get married. When they get married, their will's gone, and the person they just married is entitled to a good portion of their estate as well, and that happens immediately. So that's kind of scary. And where the disconnect is legislatively, which is really troubling, and I'm hoping it changes relatively soon, is that while somebody with an appreciable level of cognitive impairment has the legal right to get married, 5 minutes after they get married, literally 5 minutes after they are capable of getting married, they're incapable of writing a new will, because that's a financial document that they believe has a lot more understanding required. So you can get married, canceling your will, and turn around and try to write a new one, and they'll say, no, you're legally. So you have to be very careful with marriage. That's already changed in British Columbia and Alberta, and I'm hoping it changes soon here. And that's it. Questions? Mm-hmm. I'll stick around for a little bit too, but go ahead.
I just wondered, the CRA Scam.
Yeah.
Which everybody that I know has had calls over the last while. How quickly can the telephone companies or whoever sort of get in there and stop those? Or is that able to happen?
You mean like tracing the call?
Yeah. Is it just a long process of...
The problem, the same way that people can fabricate email addresses, there's any kid under 20, I wouldn't know how to do it, but any kid under 20 has access to an internet site that can make up a fake number for them, and they can call out from it. So the phone numbers that are showing up on traces are untraceable. They're coming back to computer. I think they're called HP addresses. It definitely could be wrong. It's like basically the address of your computer, and it gets very, very difficult to trace.
I'm not sure if this is as common with the elderly, but my son was scammed by somebody selling a car on Craigslist.
Yeah.
And you send the money to a Western Union.
Yeah.
And they're supposed to get a code before they can take the money out.
Yeah.
These characters were actually in Africa.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. Western Union's getting better. I think they got burned a lot and got in trouble. They're getting better, but
We had lawyers do it.
yeah, good.
They were very unresponsive until we got the lawyer.
Yeah. Good for you.
Beware of emails from Nigeria.
Yeah. 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 Africa tends to be the source of a lot of scams for whatever reason, and now China's kind of emerging. Okay.